we decided to repeat a popular experiment that has been done by many others online. And while science has failed to recognize the importance, many independent thinkers have now pondered with first-hand evidence what the impact of our feelings could really be. One of science's least measured phenomena may be one of the most important. The power and energy of emotions, moods, attitudes, speech, and behavior.
Well, that's a rather simplified suggestion of a complex mental process, but you get the idea. Cause, effectual patterns of emotional response. Rage,
the results were startling, not so much the conclusion in itself, but to experience it firsthand. What follows is the impact of our actual words. Perhaps our intentions matter.
Do you ever think about the things that you say, not just to other people, but yourself? What effect, if any, those things actually really do have? I don't just mean the superficial effects or the emotional reactions to the words that you say, but is there something deeper, a more tangible physical effect? Dr. Masaru Emoto spent the last 20 years of his life studying the molecular structure of water. It's said that Emoto believed that water is a blueprint for our reality, and that human consciousness and intention can actually affect water and change it.
We create 50 frozen samples of every water specimen, and frozen at minus 25 degrees centigrade. The crystals start to grow and expand as the temperature of the ice tip rises under the microscope. A beautiful hexagonal crystal with delicate trimmings growing slowly from the 6 points of the hexagonal core.
After photographing frozen water crystals from different water sources under a microscope, he began to experiment with the effects of different letters, then words, then pictures on water crystals. He would expose the water sources to the pictures, to the words, and then freeze them and photograph them to see if these things had any effect on the frozen crystals. What he came back from the microscope with is some pretty amazing stuff.
Emoto decided to see how thoughts and words affected the formation of untreated distilled water crystals, healing versus heavy metal music.
Wow, look at that.
What happens to the water molecules?
Over the years, this evolved into playing different pieces of music for water to see if the water structure changed, and praying over water, and then photographing it before and after he prayed over it. And what he found was so astonishing that even today, people are still trying to debunk it as pseudoscience because it has huge implications on, well, everything. And nobody wants the personal responsibility of that, I don't think. Saying nice, good, beautiful things to water, playing beautiful pieces of music to it, or offering heartfelt prayers over the water produced beautiful shapes under Dr. Emoto's microscope. But on the flip side, hateful messages and angry, disjointed music produced misshapen, ugly shapes under his microscope. A few months ago, I was looking into Dr. Emoto's work, and I came across people all over YouTube carrying out something they called the rice experiment, which is based on Emoto's work, and with what has been, for many people, some pretty surprising results. And as I've probably mentioned on this channel before, I homeschool, and we thought that our son would appreciate this one, so we did it for his science class.
Sterilizing a few jars and cooking some standard rice, we put 3 batches of this food filled with absorbed water to the test, with emotional treatment as the variable.
All right, so here's what we got. So what's this one? This one, this one.
Hate, love, ignore.
This one, we ignore. What do we do with this one? Come tell it stuff.
I hate you and I want you to die.
I mean, you just look like a bunch of maggots. It's not, I can't make a joke about it even. It's so pathetic. Oh, you're so sad. I hate you.
You're not rice, you're disgusting. You're putrid. And I know what's gonna happen to you. You're gonna turn black like your soul.
Slimy and foul, and you look like something that was scraped off the bottom of a Grand Central Station toilet. I don't think it's possible for me to hate an inanimate object more than I hate you. Alright, love rice.
Oh, how the pillowy clouds of heaven could not compare with your beauty. I love you.
I love you, love rice. And my favorite is rice. You're my best friend. Forever. I love you.
This is the way rice is supposed to be. Perfectly steamed, organic. I love you, rice. You're a really good example of rice.
I'm like that other guy over there.
And you're better than everything. I love you more than everything, even my mom.
And this is the control rice.
The message is a thought, not the word. Thought, not the words. The vocal mechanism codes the words into vibrations and transmits them as sound across the communications channel, which is, of course, the air.
So, here's the results of our 2-month-long rice experiment. But before I get into this, I just want to say that when you look this up on the internet, what you will find are a lot of very hateful people who are angry that we would dare to call this an experiment because we're not doing it in a level 4 biohazard unit or something, and that this isn't real science and they're going to debunk it. And I just think that's kind of ironic and silly because they go into it with the intention of debunking it, and then they tell you how they tried it and it totally failed, and here's all the ways it could fail, and it just takes one molecule in the air to make the whole thing, whatever, okay? Yeah, if you go into it with that intention, that's kind of what this experiment is designed to show you. And so it's no wonder that you were able to debunk it. That's kind of the whole point. So I just think that's really silly. People get so ate up about real science. Okay, the point is, it's an experiment that a layperson can do in their home, you know, to show the importance of intention and the effect that that can have. And I was actually really surprised by the results that we ended up with, because I kept an open mind on this one. I'd seen people do this experiment, and I'm homeschooling my son, so I thought for science class we could try this just to see what we ended up with. And I'm just really surprised, actually, at what we got, because check this out. So let's start with this love rice. This is our love rice here, and I'm going to turn it to the side, and hopefully you can see that, and I'll have close-up shots as well, but this rice actually doesn't look that bad at all. There's no mold in it, if you can see that. There's no mold in this rice at all. It's a little discolored, it's turning a little gray, but there's also hardly any condensation in this jar. And so that, almost from a distance, looks like just normal cooked rice. You wouldn't be able to tell that this has been sitting in this jar for 2 months now. And it's way better than this right here. Looks like a mutated nightmare out of Silent Hill. It's really, really disgusting. Some of this is actually turning orange and red. It looks like it's rusting in the jar. In the front right here, you have this nasty green mold pile that's actually growing fur. There's all kinds of condensation going down the sides of the jar. I mean, it looks really disgusting. There's like a bright orange piece of rice. I didn't even know rice could turn bright orange, but it did. This is really disgusting. That is nasty. It's nasty from super far away, and visually you can see right away there's a huge difference between this jar and this jar. But what I think is actually the most interesting for me was the ignored rice, which also has a ton of condensation in it. In the back, you have what used to be gray rice that's starting to turn black. There's a big black mold spot in the middle underneath here, and the entire thing is covered in what looks like snow, like a big mound of white mold. And there's also a ton of condensation in it as well. And so none of this rice looks the same at all, even remotely. This is rice, this is organic rice that was cooked with reverse osmosis water in the same batch, and then was placed into 3 of the same type of jar that had been sterilized with boiling water in the same exact manner at the same time, placed in the same spot on the counter. And I know the debunkers say, well, just one molecule getting in there, but you should expect that this rice will look even remotely similar. And it doesn't look anything alike. All 3 of these jars are very different. And so how is that explained by just claiming, oh, it's just one molecule in the air? I mean, come on. This is really different from here to here. I mean, this is night and day difference.
A few years ago, it was quite popular to say, I will believe nothing that I cannot see or handle or know with my physical senses. Today, this attitude is considered quite unscientific. Much of modern science deals with very real quantities and qualities that are beyond the range of the physical senses.
Despite the fact that we used to do a lot of food videos on this channel about ways to grow your own food and things like that, people nowadays come onto our channel sometimes and they say, you never give any solutions to anything on your channel. And, you know, half the problem, I think, is just talking about the things that we talk about. First of all, you can't have a solution if you don't even know there's a problem. But that having been said, I also think people are just waiting around for someone else to always tell them what the answer is to everything. And I don't think they realize how much power and control they actually do have over their own life. And I don't know, so I think some of the people that get real angry because they say this isn't a real science experiment or whatever, and they want to debunk it and tell you how powerless you really are and that there's nothing to it and everything like that. I think some of those people actually don't want this to be true, because I think they don't want to have to take responsibility for their own intentions and how those intentions have affected their life, possibly in negative ways, and the people around them too. This is going to make me think a lot harder about just the way I interact with everybody anymore. Just everybody. I mean, you hear people arguing in like a Target or something with each other, just real hateful things are coming out of their mouth. I'm going to be thinking about this rice, you know? Or all those moms that I always see out at the grocery store and they're completely ignoring their children who are, you know, little babies in the shopping cart playing with iPads and stuff. Ignoring. I mean, look at this. And just love. The intention of love. I mean, this is 2-month-old rice and it looks almost good enough to eat. There's hardly any condensation and no mold in this jar. How does that happen? Because the only real difference here is our intentions.
I wasn't that surprised because I did see the videos about this that other people had done, and the results are consistent. That's got to mean something. And I saw it done with apples and other food. And, you know, everything has a relationship of water. There's water in us, there's water in food. But I don't know if I had thought about it in such a tangible kind of way, of the way it affects ourselves, each other, the way I treat other people.
So you're going to start treating me like that one over there, right? And not that one over there.
I've been pretty much over here on this side.
Just kidding.
How are you going to treat me? It reminds me of, what's that movie where the woman cries? She makes really good soup, but she cries into the soup, and then everyone feels it when they eat the soup, but it's really good. And
the foreign one, I can't remember what that movie is.
I don't know what it's called, but it reminds me of that.
El llanto fue el primer síntoma de una intoxicación extraña. Una gran melancolía y frustración hizo presa de todos los invitados y los hizo terminar en el patio, en los corrales y los baños, añorando al amor de su vida.
I mean, we all watched this happen for weeks. Other people have done this experiment. What's really going on here?
So, this is rice that, for weeks, we told really nice, loving things to. I mean, as much as you can love a jar of rice, we tried to love this jar of rice, which at first when you do this experiment, you are going to feel silly. That's just how it is. Or not if that's your thing, you know, rice in jars. But I'm just saying, I at first felt kind of silly, but after a while you get used to it. You know, it's kind of like talking to plants, or, well, not really because plants are alive, but, you know, it's just, this rice feels even more silly to say hateful things to an inanimate object, but sometimes we didn't even say hateful things to the rice. Sometimes we just hissed at it. But it's the intention. That's the main difference here. That's what matters. And this to me, I'll tell you what this reminds me of. Back when I was really depressed in my life and I had a lot of health issues and stuff, and I was really overweight, it was almost like it got to a point where I just wanted to gain more weight, almost like a shell to keep people away from me. I was very antisocial, had a lot of issues, and that's kind of what this reminds me of, because you know that neglect is also a form of abuse. Most of us realize that, but it's like this rice has built a shell over itself to protect itself from being ignored. As if it knew it was the ignored rice. I don't know how to explain all of that. I just know that the main difference here is our intentions and how that affected these things. Because that's the only real difference between this, and this. I mean, that's the only difference. You know, and obviously it's a very important one. And what this experiment tells us, what it proves to us, is that our intentions are very powerful. They're very important in your life. The average individual has no idea how much power he has simply by setting his own intentions. And there are lots of things that science cannot prove. And one of those things are cases that have come out where people had devastating diseases, cancer, stuff like that, and they thought themselves well. They literally thought themselves well. They refused to believe in their cancer. They refused to give it any more of their attention. And they spent all of their time believing that they were healed.
If a doctor should tell you that you have cancer, that if he doesn't operate, you're doomed to die, how do you believe in him? By agreeing with his diagnosis? No. You truly believe in the doctor when you let him operate, when you submit yourself to him.
There are people who have had cancer go into remission, and that's really the only thing that changed. And so science can't explain that.
It is possible to know all this and still be lost, still not believe it. Here is a simple illustration. Two statements concerning this chair. First, I know it will hold me up. Second, well, I believe it will hold me up. Which statement is correct? The first. I know that chair will hold me up because it's a good, strong chair. We wouldn't have it here in the laboratory if it weren't, but I don't believe it. Because you can't believe in a chair standing up. Now I'm believing in the chair. I'm trusting myself to it.
To me, this proves something that I already knew in my own life. You have seen this before. A person who gets up every day, they're a real Debbie Downer, and they go, oh, today's gonna suck, and then what happens? Their day sucks. They have set their intention that their day sucks, they believe their day will suck, and they attract a terrible, sucky day. They make it happen. You know? And it is that simple. A lot of things in this universe are really that simple, and this is one of them. And it kind of branches off into a whole direction of things that I have all kinds of questions about. You know, things that we've heard about how the observer changes the experiment. I mean, where do you think that kind of stuff comes from? I feel like it works on the same principle as 100th monkey syndrome, and that same principle of when you walk into a room and you see someone across the room and you just know that's a bad person because you get a feeling that you can't explain any other way. All of these things are connected, in my opinion.
For some reason, many people seem to have two kinds of faith. One they reserve for values they consider absolute. 2 times 2 equals 4. The law of gravity. And then a so-called religious faith. which is almost a retreat from fact into a realm of fantasy. They seem to have two compartments in their brain. They keep their science on one side, their religion in the other, with a wall between them. They're afraid to remove the wall, fearing that their faith will be swept away by fact and hard reality. To say the least, such a faith lacks honest conviction. Only a faith that is founded on truth can survive.
I know that it's really a silly idea to talk to rice, okay? I get it, but just do it to show yourself how powerful your intentions are and what kind of change that can make in your life. Do we need to be doing this to ourselves? A lot of us do this to ourselves. I know I'm guilty of having done it many times in my life. Do we need to do this to ourselves or this? You could be doing this every day to really affect their own life and the people around them in this kind of a way. Can you imagine what kind of world we would have? It's something to think about anyway.
Change the message from I hate you to I love you.